My parents forbade me from attending my own graduation, so I walked away from everything my parents promised to help pay for college, until our church announced a graduation ceremony. I never imagined my biggest heartbreak wouldn't come from a breakup, but from my own parents. The people who once cheered at my kindergarten recital, who bandaged my scraped knees, and whispered bedtime prayers, now threatened to kick me out of the house for wanting to attend my own high school graduation. Let that sink in. It all started on a Sunday, June 16th. A date that's burned into my memory like a brand. That morning, I woke up hopeful, nervous about the upcoming ceremony, excited about seeing my friends walk across the stage with me. I had picked out my dress. My best friend and I were planning our little photo shoot at the park after the ceremony. My aunt was even flying in from out of state to see me. And then, it all shattered. During church service, the pastor announced a special church graduation ceremony to be held on July 7th. He talked about how this generation is losing its way, how colleges strip kids of their morals, and how it's vital to root young adults in God before they leave home. I didn't think much of it at the time. I hadn't even attended church in 2 years. Why would it concern me? But when we got home, something in my parents had shifted. My mom's expression was tight. My dad's voice, unusually calm, but cold. "We've been thinking," my mom said, folding her hands. "You shouldn't attend your high school graduation. The real celebration should be at church. That's where your future begins, in faith." I laughed. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. That night, they sat me down again. Said they'd changed their minds about supporting me through community college. That if I insisted on walking across a public school stage instead of standing in front of the church congregation to be prayed over, I could forget their help. Worse, they wouldn't even let me attend either if I chose wrong. "If you go to that school graduation," my father warned, "don't come back home that night." I was speechless. They'd promised to split my tuition if I found a summer job. I'd been applying nonstop. Had 3 interviews lined up. Everything was on track. And now, suddenly, the rules changed. No warning. No explanation. Just one sermon, and their loyalty flipped like a switch. That week was chaos. I tried reasoning with them. Pleading. Bargaining. I reminded them of the months of effort, my GPA, my volunteer hours, the scholarship applications. I reminded them that we had already invited relatives to the graduation. That my friends, the people I spent the last 4 years with, would be there. But none of it mattered. "You've lost your spiritual compass," my dad said. "We made mistakes when we were your age. College changes people. We won't pay for you to lose your soul." Their version of help came with strings, thick, choking ropes I never saw coming. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was how fast they turned it all into a punishment game. When I said I'd try to pay tuition myself, they upped the stakes, rent. Starting July. And I hadn't even landed a job yet. I felt trapped. Not just financially, emotionally. Psychologically. Because how do you explain to your friends that your parents would rather see you homeless than support you walking across a stage to celebrate 12 years of education? Now, here's where it gets more complicated. Because this wasn't just about religion. Not for me. The reason I stopped going to church 2 years ago? I was bullied. Humiliated. During a youth camp out behind the church, a girl I'll call Mandy tormented me the entire night. There were childish pranks, toothpaste in shoes, saran wrap on the sleeping bags. Stuff I could shrug off. But it escalated. During one of the nights, we were changing in the tent. Mandy made loud, cruel comments about my body. My weight. My skin. Everyone laughed. I froze. Afterward, I reported it to the chaperone, who just waved it off because she wasn't in the tent at the time. I remember sitting behind the church that night, hugging my knees to my chest, crying into the sleeves of my hoodie, wondering what I had done to deserve this. To my parents' credit, when I finally broke down and told them everything, they took my side. Let me skip youth group. Stopped making me go to church every Sunday. I thought they understood. I thought they'd changed. But now it felt like they forgot everything. Like they were choosing some performative image of faith over my lived trauma, my dreams, my life. And just like that, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was a project. A soul to be saved. I tried to make backup plans. I asked my older sister if she could mediate. She shrugged it off. Said I was overreacting and should just do what mom and dad wanted, show up, smile, and stop being dramatic. She didn't get it. She still went to church. She was their golden child, aligned with their politics, their beliefs, their expectations. I asked a friend's family if I could crash with them if I ended up being kicked out. They said no. Too last minute. I tried my aunt, the one who lived states away. She said she'd help, just not in time for the graduation. Flights were too expensive. Work schedule too tight. It felt like every door I knocked on was slamming shut before I could even get my hand off the handle. At night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering, is it really worth it? A once-in-a-lifetime ceremony, traded for a roof over my head? Was walking across a stage in front of my peers really worth getting thrown out? Losing my bed? My books? My childhood home? That's when I started to feel the fear twist into something else. Not just dread, but grief. The slow kind. The kind that eats away at the edges of who you are, until you don't recognize yourself anymore. I wish I could say I stood my ground. That I walked that graduation stage proudly, defiant, chin up, refusing to bow to pressure. But the truth? I broke. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Not with screaming or door slamming. It was quieter than that. A slow, sinking unraveling. It started when I told my aunt everything. I had no other adult to turn to. I thought, maybe, just maybe, she could talk to my parents, knock some sense into them. I didn't expect a miracle. I just wanted to feel less alone. She listened. Genuinely. She said she might be able to host me later in the summer. Not in time for graduation, but maybe soon enough to help me move forward. She also offered to call my parents. I said yes. That was a mistake. Because when they found out, it was like a fuse had been lit. My dad slammed the door so hard it shook the windows. My mom cried, but not in the way that meant sadness, no. It was guilt-tripping, shaming, fire and brimstone type of crying. How could you talk about us behind our backs? She's not part of this family. That's our business. You're turning people against us with lies. And then came the worst part. They demanded my phone. I resisted, at first. I clutched it like it was oxygen. It was my only connection to the outside world, my only lifeline. But they threatened to cancel my plan, disable my number, throw out my laptop too. And I caved. I gave up both. Because I was terrified. Of being locked out. Of coming back from the graduation to find my suitcase on the porch, clothes in trash bags, books scattered on the lawn like they meant nothing. I didn't have a lease. I had no legal ground to stand on. I was just a scared teen, trying to survive one more month in a house that no longer felt like home. The silence after that was unbearable. No music. No texts. No internet. Just my thoughts. The sound of my heartbeat pounding in the quiet. The echoes of everything I couldn't say out loud. I stopped eating regularly. Skipped meals to avoid the kitchen. I didn't want to see them. Didn't want to pretend we were still a family. I skipped hangouts. Canceled on friends. I couldn't explain what was going on without a phone. And even if I could, what would I say? Sorry, can't come to our graduation photo shoot because my parents think the devil lives at the school auditorium. Yeah, that would go over well. But the worst part, the truly soul-crushing moment, was realizing they were happy. Happy that I was folding. Smiling again. Offering me food like nothing happened. Returning my phone charger. Asking if I wanted to help cook dinner. It was like they thought I had finally seen the light. Like threatening my security, my sanity, and my future was justified because it pushed me into obedience. And I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I smiled. Because I was tired. Because I couldn't fight anymore. Because sometimes survival looks like submission. And that's when I made my decision. I wouldn't go to my high school graduation. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't afford to. Not emotionally. Not financially. Not physically. I couldn't risk coming back to nothing. I couldn't take the anxiety anymore, the idea that, while I was hugging my friends and throwing my cap in the air, my parents might be packing up my room, changing the locks, erasing me. So I let it go. That moment I'd dreamed of for years, gone. And in its place? A stage in a church I hadn't set foot in for 2 years, where I'd once been mocked, belittled, and humiliated. Where no one cared about who I was, just who I pretended to be. The church graduation lasted 5 minutes. 5. The pastor called the graduates to the front. Said a generic prayer. Thanked us for staying rooted in faith. We didn't even get a gift. Mother's Day had chocolates and carnations. Easter had gift bags for the kids. We got a prayer and a barbecue. And I stood there, smiling for the photos, nodding along, thinking, this is what I gave everything up for? But hey, the food was decent. My cousins handed me cards with money. My uncle cracked a joke. We went to a restaurant afterward, the same one we used to go to when my dad got promoted in church leadership. The same booth. Same waiter. Same tired routine. Same mask on my face. That night, my parents gave me my phone back. My dad even patted me on the shoulder and said, "We're proud of you." I wanted to ask, for what? For obeying? For staying quiet? For choosing fear over freedom? But I didn't ask. I just nodded. Because I had a bigger plan now. No more tuition help. No more rent talks. No more trusting their word. I would find a job, too, if I had to. I would move out. And I would never come back. You ever feel like you're watching your life happen to someone else? That's what the days after the church graduation felt like. Like I was floating above my own body, watching a girl who looked like me go through the motions, eating dinner at the table, smiling at her parents, scrolling job boards, pretending to care about anything. But inside? Nothing. Just blankness. Not sadness. Not anger. Just a dull, echoing silence where my dreams used to be. I started job hunting with a vengeance. Every morning, I'd wake up early, not because I was excited, but because I couldn't sleep. I'd scroll listings, submit applications, update my resume again and again. Retail. Grocery stores. Pet supply chains. Babysitting gigs. I didn't care. I just needed something. Anything that could buy me the freedom I no longer had. I told myself, this is temporary. One job. One paycheck. 1 month. Then I'm out. But the more I searched, the more hopeless it felt. Most places wanted experience. Some didn't reply at all. One place called me in for an interview, only to cancel the morning of, "We filled the position already, sorry." And meanwhile, at home, my parents acted like we were back to normal. They asked about my job progress with these smug smiles, as if a church graduation magically cured the rift between us. They cooked my favorite meals. Left sticky notes on the fridge. "Don't forget God loves you. We only want what's best." And every time I saw one, I wanted to tear it down. Because I hadn't forgotten. I just couldn't forgive. Some nights, I sat in bed and stared at the ceiling, counting the weeks I had left. Imagining how I'd pack my bags. Who I'd call first when I got hired. Whether my aunt would help me get a second-hand car if I saved enough. Other nights, I cried quietly into my pillow, holding my phone like a lifeline, afraid to reach out to friends because I didn't know how to explain any of this without sounding broken. Because I was. Not because of what they took, my ceremony, my tuition, my choices. But because they made me feel small for wanting them. Like I was the problem. Like I had strayed. I started journaling, secretly, on my laptop. I wrote down everything I couldn't say out loud, the memories of that girl at church camp, the ache of missing my friend's graduation photos, the rage I swallowed every time my mom said, "We're so glad you came around." I wrote letters to my future self. Letters like, "One day you'll have your own apartment, and no one will tell you where you can go. You'll have friends who call you brave instead of rebellious. You'll walk across another stage, and this time it'll be for you, not them." It helped. A little. Like leaving breadcrumbs back to myself. One night, I got a call from my aunt again. This time, I answered with shaky hands. She told me she found someone in her neighborhood who was hiring part-time, a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid decently, and the owner was kind. She offered to talk to them on my behalf. I nearly cried. "It's not much," she said. "But it's a start. If you can make it here, I'll help with the rest." That night, I stared out the window for hours. It was the first time in weeks I saw a future again, blurry, uncertain, but real. And just as hope returned, so did the fear. Because my parents started asking questions. "Why are you so smiley these days? Who are you always emailing? You're not planning anything stupid, are you?" I denied. Deflected. Laughed it off. But I knew they could smell change. And change is dangerous in a house that thrives on control. That Sunday, they brought up rent again. "You're almost an adult," my dad said. "It's time you start contributing." I asked for more time. Said I needed to find stable work first. They nodded. But I could feel the clock ticking. July was around the corner. I had maybe a few weeks before the peace shattered again. So I started preparing in secret. I packed slowly. A few clothes here. Some books there. I kept a duffel bag under my bed, half filled. I copied important documents onto a USB stick. I backed up my resume. I rehearsed my escape like a spy movie. Every knock on the door made me jump. Every text from my aunt felt like a lifeline pulling me closer to safety. And then, one morning, I woke up. And realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Tired, yes. Wounded, deeply. But no longer paralyzed. Because something inside me had shifted. Something strong. Quiet. Resolute. I had survived their test. And I would survive the next one, too. The day I left didn't look heroic. There were no dramatic confrontations. No screaming. No slamming doors or bags flying down the stairs. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. I woke up before the sun, heart racing, duffel bag already zipped from the night before. My parents were still asleep. The hallway creaked under my feet like it was holding its breath for me. I tiptoed past the photos on the wall, childhood smiles, Christmas mornings, Easter outfits. All of them felt like pictures of someone else's life. A life that had been chipped away, piece by piece, until all that was left was a shell wearing my name. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob, and I thought, this is it. The moment I become someone else. Someone who chooses herself. My aunt was waiting in her car 2 blocks away. I didn't want to risk the driveway. Didn't want to wake them up and have them talk me out of it, or worse. The morning air was thick, humid, sticky with summer. But each step I took away from that house felt lighter. Like I was unzipping the skin I had worn for too long. By the time I slid into her passenger seat, I could barely breathe from the weight that had lifted. She looked at me and didn't say anything for a minute. Just reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I believed it. The ride to her house was long. 6 hours of highways, silence, a couple awkward gas station stops, and too much time to think. But I needed that silence. I needed it to process. To feel the grief and the freedom. Because leaving wasn't just about escape. It was a funeral for the daughter they wanted me to be, the obedient one, the agreeable one, the soul they thought they were saving while they were shattering mine. And it was a birth, too. Of me. On my terms. When we got to my aunt's place, she helped me carry my things inside. Her guest room was small, a twin bed, a lamp, beige walls, but to me, it looked like a palace. No scripture on the walls. No rules about what to wear or where to go. No cold silences if I said the wrong thing. Just safety. Peace. And something I hadn't felt in so long, possibility. That week, I started working at the local bookstore. It was quiet, a little dusty, run by an old couple who treated me like I mattered. They didn't know my story. They didn't need to. All they saw was a girl who showed up on time, asked questions, laughed at their jokes about paperbacks, and organized the mystery section alphabetically even when no one asked her to. I made minimum wage. I smelled like old novels. And I loved every minute of it. Meanwhile, back home, my phone buzzed. Texts from my mom, my sister, my dad, at first angry, then pleading, then cold. "We just wanted to protect you. You embarrassed us. This isn't the way to fix things. God will humble you." I didn't respond. Not out of spite. But because I didn't owe them my pain anymore. Or my silence. Or my return. I missed my friend's graduation, yeah. I missed the cap toss. The cheers. The photos with decorated mortarboards and balloons and crying moms in the crowd. But you know what? That 5-minute fake church ceremony didn't define me. And neither did the graduation I gave up. What did define me was what happened after. The moment I said enough. The moment I stopped being their project. The moment I stopped apologizing for existing outside their image of who I was supposed to be. Now, I'm building. Brick by brick. I'm looking into student aid. Scholarships. Online classes. I'm learning how to budget. How to do laundry without being scolded. How to go to bed without crying into my pillow. How to wake up in a room that feels like mine. There are still days when I feel heavy. When the grief sneaks back in, wearing their voices. But there are other days, more and more now, where I feel light. Where I can breathe. Where I remember that freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Like walking out a door before sunrise, heart racing, into a new life that finally belongs to you. Graduation kept anyone else caught in a family that calls control love and fear faith. You're not alone. You are not selfish for wanting to be seen. You are not wrong for wanting to be free. And no matter how many ceremonies you miss, you can still choose to celebrate yourself. Even if no one claps when you do it.